the land beyond the north wind. They called it Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. To the ancient Greeks, it was not just a myth. It was a place so far north that winter itself could not reach it, a realm of eternal sunlight, peace, and godlike beings. Some described it as an island encircled by mountains of ice. Others saw it as a vanished continent that once crowned the top of the world. But for thousands of years, one question has haunted historians, mystics, and explorers alike. Was Hyperborea ever real? The first whispers of this hidden realm appear in texts older than Plato's Atlantis. Herodotus, the father of history, mentioned a mysterious people who lived beyond Boreas, the god of the north wind. Pindar wrote of a paradise where the Hyperboreans lived for 1,000 years in joy and song. They needed no laws, for harmony guided them. They needed no temples, for the gods themselves walked among them. It sounded like a fable, yet the details were too specific to ignore. In the 5th century BCE, Greek geographers argued over its location. Some placed it past the Riphean Mountains, an ancient term for what might have been the Urals or the Altai range. Others thought it lay beyond the Arctic Circle, perhaps near the pole itself. The mystery deepened when myths from other cultures seemed to echo the same story. The Norse spoke of Asgard and Thule, divine lands in the frozen north. The Hindus spoke of Uttarakuru, a northern paradise where divine beings lived in eternal light. How could so many civilizations share the same direction, the same dream? The deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. Hyperborea was not only a place, it was an idea, a memory embedded in the human soul of a time when the world was different, when the poles were not covered in ice. Some modern researchers have asked whether ancient peoples preserved, through myth, the memory of a real prehistoric civilization that once flourished in the northern hemisphere, a world now buried beneath glaciers. Could there have been a time when the North Pole was green? Geological evidence suggests that millions of years ago, the Arctic was a warm, forested region teeming with life. Fossilized trees, tropical plants, and animal remains have been found on islands now locked in ice. But what if this warming happened much more recently than we've been told? What if advanced humans, or something like them, lived there before a sudden catastrophe shifted Earth's axis and froze their world in an instant? These are dangerous questions, the kind that unsettle history itself. Yet traces of Hyperborea keep surfacing in the most unexpected places. Ancient maps depict a circular landmass around the pole. Old Norse sagas tell of explorers who sailed north and found a luminous world, where the sun never set and where time itself seemed to stand still. Even in medieval times, secret societies spoke of the Northern Light, a place of origin from which all wisdom once flowed. But if Hyperborea truly existed, why does nothing remain? Why has the Earth swallowed all signs of this civilization, leaving only fragments of myth? Perhaps the answer lies in what happened next. A catastrophe so vast, it erased an entire world from memory. Because Hyperborea, some say, did not simply vanish. It sank beneath the ice after the last great cosmic shift, the same cataclysm that might have ended the last ice age and rewritten the map of the planet. And if that is true, then our entire understanding of human history may be standing on borrowed ground. But what if the ancients were trying to warn us? What if the legend of Hyperborea was not about a lost paradise, but about what happens when civilizations rise too close to the sun? What came next would challenge everything we think we know about the past. Echoes beneath the ice. The Arctic is not as empty as it seems. Beneath its endless white, under layers of frozen soil and silence, lie echoes, the kind that whisper of a forgotten age. Scientists call them anomalies, geologists call them curiosities, but to those who listen more closely, they sound like voices from Hyperborea itself. In the early 20th century, Russian explorers ventured across the northern tundra in search of mineral wealth. What they found instead were mysteries. Strange stone formations half buried in permafrost, fragments of worked rock where no known civilization had ever lived. And in the Siberian wilderness, On the Yamal Peninsula, explorers stumbled upon something even stranger, a circular depression filled with metallic debris and fused rock, as if struck by unimaginable heat. Officially, it became known as the Tunguska event of 1908, the explosion of a meteor. Yet even now, more than a century later, some researchers argue that the cause was not celestial, but technological. Nearby tribes told stories that sound eerily ancient. They spoke of the fire from the sky, a punishment sent by gods who once lived in the northern mountains. These gods, they said, vanished long ago after building the cities of light that are now hidden beneath the earth. When ethnographers recorded these myths, few realized how closely they echoed the Greek accounts of Hyperborea, where radiant beings lived in harmony with the forces of nature until something destroyed their world. Could the Arctic's frozen plains conceal ruins older than any known civilization? Satellite images of northern Russia and Greenland have revealed geometric patterns under the ice. Circles, lines, and rectangular outlines that some claim are too precise to be natural. Most are dismissed as geological artifacts or digital distortions. But every once in a while, an image surfaces that defies simple explanation. Symmetrical ridges that resemble walls, hexagonal formations that align with celestial coordinates, and magnetic anomalies that suggest vast metal deposits, arranged in deliberate order. In 2012, a joint Russian-European team drilled deep into Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake sealed off for millions of years. The results were never fully disclosed, but leaked notes hinted at unidentified microbial life and metallic artifacts recovered from the borehole. The data vanished from public record soon after. Conspiracy theorists rushed to claim that Vostok hid remnants of Hyperborea, or evidence of something far older than human civilization. Scientists, of course, dismissed it all as fantasy. But one has to wonder, why the silence? Throughout the 20th century, the Soviet Union quietly funded expeditions into the Arctic under programs with cryptic names: Project Zvezda, Northern Genesis, Kronos Sever. Decades later, declassified documents revealed that some of these missions were not geological at all, but ethno-historical. They searched for traces of a northern cradle of civilization, a place their scholars once equated with the mythical Hyperborea. The idea was simple yet radical. If humanity began in the north, then the entire framework of ancient history must be rewritten. Even the Nazis, obsessed with Aryan origins, sent expeditions toward the Arctic, convinced that beneath the ice lay the remnants of the first godlike race. Their occult division, the Ahnenerbe, believed Hyperborea was real, a lost homeland of luminous beings who had once ruled the earth. The war ended before they could prove anything. But after their defeat, some of their Arctic maps vanished into classified Western archives, never to be seen again. And so the question lingers: why have so many powers, ancient and modern, looked to the frozen north for answers about our beginnings? Is it simply a metaphor for purity and light? Or is there something physically there, buried beneath the ice, calling to us? If the frozen ground could speak, what stories would it tell? Would it reveal that humanity's memory stretches further back than recorded time, to an epoch when the poles were warm and when gods walked as men? For now, the Arctic keeps its silence. But the ice is melting, and with each passing year, more of the ancient ground awakens. Fossils emerge, ancient microbes revive, and strange metallic relics wash ashore on northern coasts. Something long hidden is slowly revealing itself, and among researchers, a quiet rumor grows that within this thaw lies the key to the oldest civilization ever known. But if Hyperborea is awakening from its icy tomb, then what we uncover next could either confirm our origins or unravel them completely. Because beneath the ice, there are echoes, and they are growing louder. The polar axis and the Great Shift. For centuries, ancient myths have spoken of worlds turned upside down, of floods, fires, and frozen dawns that marked the end of golden ages. But what if those myths weren't allegories at all? What if they described something real, a planetary event that changed the face of Earth, and in doing so, buried Hyperborea beneath eternal ice? Modern science acknowledges that Earth's axis tilts at 23.5 degrees, the reason we have seasons. Yet geological evidence shows that this tilt hasn't always been the same. Earth's axis wobbles over long cycles, a phenomenon known as axial precession. But some researchers suggest that more violent shifts, true pole displacements, may have occurred in prehistory, perhaps triggered by cataclysmic events, asteroid impacts, crustal displacement, or gravitational interactions with other celestial bodies. The idea was controversial, yet it gained new attention in the mid-20th century with the work of Charles Hapgood, a historian who argued that Earth's crust could slide over its molten interior, repositioning entire continents in a geological instant. Albert Einstein, though cautious, called the theory not impossible. Hapgood's maps showed that regions now buried under ice, like Antarctica, might once have been in temperate zones, fertile and inhabited. If this could happen at the South Pole, could it also have happened at the North? Imagine a time before the tilt, when the Arctic was lush and green, bathed in perpetual sunlight. In that age, Hyperborea would not have been a frozen wasteland, but a radiant land of abundance. Geological cores from the Arctic Ocean reveal layers of pollen, wood, and temperate flora, evidence of forests that once thrived near the pole. Mammoth remains found in Siberia contain undigested tropical plants in their stomachs, frozen mid-meal, as if a sudden violent shift had transformed paradise into permafrost overnight. Ancient records seem to remember this cosmic catastrophe. The Greeks spoke of a fall of the heavens, when the sky tilted and the sun's path changed. The Maya described the movement of the sun, a celestial realignment that destroyed the first world. In the Hindu Puranas, the earth is said to have staggered like a drunken man when the gods fought their final battle. Even the Hopi of North America recall previous worlds destroyed when the poles changed places. Could these be distant cultural memories of the same event, the great axis shift that doomed Hyperborea? If the planet's crust did indeed move, the consequences would have been apocalyptic. Oceans would have surged across continents, mountain ranges would have torn open, and entire civilizations would have been erased. Survivors, scattered across the globe, would have carried only fragments of memory, myths of a lost homeland to the north, a shining land swallowed by ice and time, Hyperborea. And perhaps this is why the legend persisted. Not because it was fantasy, but because it was remembrance. Some scientists argue that the last such shift could have occurred near the end of the Pleistocene, around 12,000 years ago, the very time global temperatures rose dramatically, glaciers melted, and sea levels rose by more than 400 feet. This event, known as the Younger Dryas, coincides with the sudden extinction of many large animals and the mysterious appearance of early advanced societies in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Andes, as if survivors from a lost civilization had carried their knowledge southward to rebuild. If so, then Hyperborea may have been the mother civilization, the origin point of all others. When their homeland froze, its refugees may have migrated across the world, seeding the myths of gods descending from the sky, bringers of light, knowledge, and agriculture. But if Hyperborea truly fell because of a shift in the planet itself, then we must ask, was this a natural event or something more? Ancient texts hint at divine wars, celestial weapons, and catastrophes unleashed by prideful beings who tampered with the heavens. Could Hyperborea have fallen victim to its own mastery of the forces that sustain the world? Perhaps they reached too far, and the Earth answered. For now, we are left with clues: magnetic anomalies beneath polar ice, ancient cartographic records that defy explanation, and myths that converge across continents on the same cosmic event. Something happened, something vast enough to twist the planet and erase a world. And yet, in the ruins of that destruction, the memory of light endured. Because when the Earth tilted, Hyperborea did not simply die, it transformed into legend, waiting for us to remember. And remember we will, because the next discovery will take us deeper, to the maps that should not exist. The forbidden maps of the ancient world history insists that humans discovered the polar regions only a few centuries ago. Yet scattered across old archives are maps that tell a different story, a story older, deeper, and far more unsettling. They show coastlines buried under ice, mountains that should not exist, and continents that the modern world has forgotten. Among them lies a pattern, a secret geography that seems to whisper the name Hyperborea. The most famous of these anomalies is the Piri race map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. On its worn gazelle skin, it depicts the western coasts of Africa, South America, and something extraordinary, the northern edge of Antarctica, free of ice. Officially, Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1820, and yet here it was, accurately drawn centuries earlier, with details only modern satellite mapping has confirmed. The admiral himself claimed he had compiled his chart from ancient sources, maps far older than the Greeks or Egyptians. But whose sources? Whose knowledge? The mystery deepens when we examine the Orontius Phineas map from 1531, which shows Antarctica's full outline, rivers, valleys, and mountain ranges, again, all without ice. The level of precision suggests first-hand knowledge of a world before the last glacial expansion. Could these maps be copies of Atlantean charts, as some have claimed? Or are they echoes of something even older, a memory of Hyperborea before the Great Shift? At the top of these maps lies another enigma. Many medieval charts, including the Mercator maps of the 16th century, depict the North Pole not as a featureless cap of ice, but as a massive circular landmass divided into 4 quadrants by rivers, surrounding a dark central mountain. They called it Rupes Nigra, the Black Rock, said to rise at the very center of the world. Around it, 4 rivers flowed toward the cardinal directions, a perfect cross, a symbol of balance. Early explorers believed this was Hyperborea itself, the lost polar continent. Gerardus Mercator, one of history's greatest cartographers, described this land in his letters. At the North Pole there stands a high rock about 33 leagues in circuit. The waters of the oceans flow inward to this place, where they are swallowed into the earth. His depiction matched ancient myth and echoed Norse cosmology, in which the world's axis, the Yggdrasil, the world tree, stood at the pole, connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld. But where did Mercator get his information? He never traveled there. Instead, he drew from even older sources. The Inventio Fortunata, a now-lost 14th century chronicle said to be based on Viking voyages to the far north. That document has never been recovered, but its descriptions matched Hyperborean legends perfectly. Eternal daylight, mountains of magnetic stone, and inhabitants of extraordinary height and wisdom. This cannot be coincidence. Across centuries and civilizations, cartographers kept drawing what official science denies: an ancient land beyond the pole, a region with rivers and mountains where today only ice and ocean exist. Were they imagining it? Or were they preserving knowledge passed down through secret channels, guarded by initiates of forgotten orders? Some researchers point to the Zeno map of 1380, which shows Greenland and northern Canada connected by smaller islands that no longer exist. Others reference the Boache map from 1739, which presents Antarctica without its ice sheet, revealing a twin-continent structure, just as modern seismic studies have confirmed. The level of accuracy is impossible to dismiss. Whoever first charted these lands must have lived in a time when the poles were temperate, ice-free, and inhabited. That time, according to myth, was the age of Hyperborea. If those maps are fragments of ancient knowledge, then our civilization is not the first to achieve global navigation. Someone, long before us, understood the curvature of the Earth, the mathematics of latitude, and the symmetry of the poles. They had seen the true face of the planet, and when their world ended, their knowledge scattered, preserved in fragments, copied and recopied by hands that no longer understood their meaning. Perhaps this is why secret societies across history, from the Templars to the Rosicrucians, spoke of the Great North, the hidden source of wisdom. They may not have been searching for treasure, but for truth, because these maps, silent and faded, contain a message, a reminder that the world we think we know has turned many times before. And if we could decode them fully, they might reveal not only the lost geography of Hyperborea, but the fate of its people, and where they went when the ice came. For in the heart of every ancient map lies a warning. The Earth remembers more than we do, and what those maps reveal next will bring us face to face with the beings who once ruled that vanished world. The beings of the North, gods, giants, and the Hyperborean race. Who were the Hyperboreans? To the ancient world, they were not mere mortals. They were a bridge between gods and men, radiant, ageless, and untouched by suffering. Every civilization that remembered them described them in reverent awe, as if recalling ancestors who had transcended the limits of humanity itself. In Greek tradition, the Hyperboreans were a race of tall, fair-skinned beings who lived in perfect harmony with nature. They were immune to disease and old age, sustained by light and air rather than food. The poet Pindar wrote that they lived far from labor and battle, unshaken by the wrath of Nemesis, existing in perpetual sunlight beneath a sky that never darkened. Their music was said to echo across the world, carried southward by the northern wind itself, Boreas. The Hyperboreans worshipped Apollo, god of light and healing. Each year, according to Herodotus, they sent sacred offerings to the Temple of Delphi, gifts carried hand to hand through tribes and nations, passed southward from Hyperborea all the way to Greece. The journey symbolized the flow of divine wisdom from the north to the rest of the world. Even the priests of Delphi believed their god spent half the year among the Hyperboreans, returning each spring renewed. To them, Hyperborea was not mythic, it was home. But the Greeks were not alone in their reverence. In Norse mythology, there were the Aesir, tall, luminous beings who descended from the northern heavens and established Asgard, a fortress of shining halls beyond the mortal realm. They, too, were associated with eternal light and a land untouched by decay. The resemblance to the Hyperborean myth is uncanny. Could Asgard have been another name for the same polar paradise, remembered through a different cultural lens? Even farther east, the ancient Hindus spoke of Uttarakuru, a land north of the Himalayas where the sun circled the horizon but never set. Its inhabitants were wise, peaceful, and long-lived, ruled not by kings, but by sages who communed directly with the gods. Buddhist texts mention similar realms, Shambhala and Agartha, hidden kingdoms in the north that preserve sacred knowledge against the corruption of the world. All these cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, told the same story, of a race of godlike beings from the polar dawn, guardians of an age when the earth itself was young. But were they human? Descriptions vary. Some ancient sources speak of their extraordinary stature, giants 10 or 12 feet tall. Others describe them as beings of pure light, their bodies half physical, half ethereal. They were said to radiate a warmth that melted snow and caused plants to bloom wherever they walked. Could these be poetic metaphors for advanced humans, or literal descriptions of another species entirely? The philosopher Diodorus Siculus wrote that Hyperborea was the land nearest to the moon, and that its inhabitants looked upon the stars as their brothers. He described them as scientists and astronomers who built great temples aligned with the celestial poles. These temples of light, he said, could capture the energy of the sun and stars. Was this myth or memory of a lost technology? Some esoteric traditions go further. The theosophists of the 19th century, building on ancient Hindu cosmology, spoke of root races, successive ages of humanity. According to their writings, the third root race originated in Hyperborea, when the Earth's climate was mild and luminous. These beings, they claimed, were semi-etheric, capable of shaping matter through thought. Whether myth or metaphysics, the pattern remains. A golden age in the north, followed by a catastrophic fall. But why did it end? Many myths speak of hubris, the arrogance of those who tried to wield divine power. The Hyperboreans, some texts say, tried to master the heavens, and in doing so triggered the very catastrophe that destroyed them. Others tell of a cosmic war between light and darkness, between the Hyperboreans and the children of fire, an echo of the later Titanomachy and the wars of the gods. When the Earth's axis shifted, their paradise was consumed by ice, and the survivors fled south. If those survivors carried their knowledge with them, they would have appeared as gods among primitive tribes, teachers of agriculture, astronomy, and sacred law. Could this explain why every ancient civilization, from Sumer to Egypt to Mesoamerica, speaks of divine beings descending from the sky, bringing light to a darkened world? Perhaps the Hyperboreans never truly vanished. Perhaps they became the prototypes of the gods themselves. Apollo, Odin, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, all avatars of the same luminous lineage that once ruled beneath the northern sun. And if their bloodlines endured, scattered through the ages, then humanity's story is not one of progress, but of remembering who we once were. Because the further we dig into myth, the clearer it becomes. Hyperborea was not only real, it was the beginning of the human dream of light. And somewhere, hidden in the oldest stones of the earth, may lie the proof that they walked among us. The temples of the sun, ruins and alignments from the polar age. If Hyperborea truly existed, it would have left its fingerprints not only in myth, but in stone. Across the ancient world, temples and monuments are aligned with impossible precision to solstices, equinoxes, and stars that no longer rise where they once did. They trace a geometry that seems to remember a different position of the heavens, a forgotten axis. Could these alignments be remnants of a global network built by a civilization that once centered itself around the pole? The great temples of antiquity all share one secret. They are instruments of the sun. In Egypt, the pyramids of Giza align perfectly with the cardinal points, an accuracy so great it surpasses modern engineering tolerances. The Great Pyramid's shafts point towards stars that no longer occupy those coordinates, suggesting they were aligned over 12,000 years ago, precisely when the last ice age ended. At Stonehenge, the stones mark the summer solstice sunrise with flawless precision, yet geological studies reveal that parts of the monument predate the Neolithic farmers who supposedly built it. In the high Andes, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, built from cyclopean blocks weighing hundreds of tons, aligns with the June solstice sun, the same date that marks the Arctic summer solstice when the pole bathes in endless daylight. And in Angkor Wat, the entire complex mirrors the constellation of Draco as it appeared not in the current epoch, but in 10500 BCE, a date again tied to the period when Hyperborea would have thrived. These correlations cannot be dismissed as coincidence. They hint at a shared ancient knowledge, one that transcended continents and time. All these sites seem to participate in a forgotten geometry that once united heaven and earth through the pole. Archaeoastronomers have noticed something peculiar. If we project the ancient alignments backward using precession of the equinoxes, many of the world's oldest monuments converge not toward modern Polaris, but toward a different celestial pole, the one that would have been visible before Earth's last axial shift. The invisible point around which all stars once turned, the axis mundi of myth, corresponds to the location of Hyperborea in ancient cosmology. It is as if the builders of those temples were orienting their monuments to honor a memory, the lost homeland of the North, the original world center from which all sacred architecture descended. In the Greek world, Apollo's temples were always oriented northward, toward the path of the god's journey from and back to Hyperborea. In Delphi, the Omphalos stone, the navel of the earth, was said to have been brought from that very land. The temple of Amun-Ra in Egypt aligns not only to the sun's yearly passage, but also to the star Thuban, the old North Star, precisely where the polar axis pointed during the epoch of 12,000 BCE. Is it possible that these ancient builders were deliberately maintaining a cosmic memory of their origin, a celestial fingerprint of Hyperborea itself? Even the layout of ancient cities supports this pattern. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the pyramids of Mesoamerica, the step structures of Cambodia, all mirror the same solar-lunar ratios. All mark cycles of precession, all encode the concept of an eternal light circling above the horizon. Were these monuments created by different cultures, or by descendants of a single forgotten civilization spreading its sacred geometry across the planet after its homeland was lost to the ice? If we overlay global maps of prehistoric sites, a strange symmetry emerges. From Giza to Baalbek, from Teotihuacan to Angkor, the alignments seem to spiral toward the pole. Their orientations, measured over thousands of years, reflect a memory of a time when the pole itself may have been in a different position, when the axis of the world ran through what is now the Arctic Ocean, directly over the coordinates where ancient maps once placed Hyperborea, and then there are the ruins beneath the sea. Sonar scans off the coast of northern Russia and under the Arctic shelf reveal what appear to be massive geometric formations, grid-like patterns and circular depressions arranged with unnatural symmetry. Officially, they are dismissed as glacial formations. Yet the structures bear a haunting resemblance to the layout of the world's earliest temples. The same right angles, the same astronomical orientation, frozen beneath miles of ice. Perhaps these were the northern prototypes, the original temples of the sun that mirrored the heavens when the world still faced another sky. What if every sacred site on Earth, every pyramid, every megalith, every temple aligned to the stars is a reflection of Hyperborea's light, projected southward by those who fled its fall? Each monument would then be a memory in stone, a way to keep the rhythm of the heavens alive long after the world shifted and the true pole was lost. And if that is true, then the ruins of Hyperborea are not gone. They surround us, scattered across continents, encoded in architecture written in light and shadow. We have been walking through their remnants for millennia without realizing what they truly signify. The temples are speaking. We have simply forgotten the language. But the next step in our search will take us beneath the earth itself, to the tunnels and chambers that some believe lead to the last refuge of the Hyperboreans, the hollow earth and the polar gateways. Every age has its forbidden idea, the one so strange it threatens to rewrite everything we believe about our planet. For centuries, that idea has been this, that beneath our feet lies another world, a vast network of subterranean realms connected by hidden tunnels, luminous caverns, and ancient cities preserved from the surface's destruction. And according to countless myths, the gateways to this inner world lie at the poles. The legend of Hyperborea's fall always carries a second thread: survival. The Hyperboreans, said to be masters of both nature and light, foresaw the coming catastrophe. Some traditions claim they built sanctuaries deep underground, while others say the earth itself opened to receive them. Their realm became invisible to the surface, sealed away by the frozen breath of Boreas. But their light, it is said, still shines within. Ancient myths across cultures hint at this hidden geography. The Greeks spoke of caverns of the north wind, where heroes disappeared and never returned. The Norse sagas told of Svartalfheim, a realm of beings who lived beneath the earth, illuminated by inner suns. In Hindu cosmology, the northern mountain Meru, the axis of the world, was said to be hollow, with radiant kingdoms within. Even in Native American lore, tribes such as the Hopi and the Lakota describe their ancestors emerging from underground worlds after a great flood or fire destroyed the surface. The same pattern repeats: catastrophe, retreat, rebirth, and always the entrance lies somewhere in the north. When explorers first reached the Arctic, some reported phenomena that defied explanation. Warm winds where none should exist, strange mirages of green valleys shimmering above the horizon, compasses spinning wildly near certain latitudes. In the 19th century, the American explorer John Cleves Symmes proposed a radical theory that the Earth was hollow, with openings at both poles leading into vast interior realms. He petitioned Congress to fund an expedition, a journey to the inside of the globe. He was ridiculed. Yet his idea ignited a quiet fascination that never truly died. In 1947, the legend deepened. Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a decorated polar explorer, conducted a secret mission over the North Pole, known as Operation High Jump. Officially, it was a military survey. Unofficially, it became one of the most controversial events in modern exploration. Byrd later claimed to have flown beyond the pole and entered a region of lush vegetation, warm air, and mammoth-like creatures. His alleged diary, whose authenticity remains debated, describes meeting beings of immense intelligence who warned humanity against nuclear self-destruction. The story sounds fantastical, yet parts of his flight logs remain classified to this day. Could Byrd have stumbled upon the remnants of Hyperborea, hidden beneath the Arctic ice? Even modern satellite data hints at anomalies near both poles, gravitational irregularities, magnetic distortions, and unexplained heat sources deep below the crust. Seismic readings reveal vast, hollow regions, some extending hundreds of miles. Officially, they are called mantle plumes, or subglacial lakes. Unofficially, they match the ancient descriptions of vast subterranean spaces, the inner domains of legend. In the esoteric tradition, this hidden world is called Agartha, the inner earth. Its capital, Shambhala, is described as a city of eternal light powered by the heart of the planet. Theosophical writings claim that Agartha is inhabited by the descendants of Hyperborea, beings who preserved the sacred sciences and await the time when the surface is ready to remember. Some even believe they occasionally guide human history from the shadows, sending emissaries, sages, inventors, visionaries to reawaken lost knowledge. Skeptics dismiss these tales as allegory, but consider this. Every ancient temple and myth points northward. Every map shows a circular land around the pole, and every legend speaks of survivors who descended into the earth after the last cataclysm. Could all of these fragments be describing the same truth, refracted through time, that Hyperborea did not vanish, but simply moved inward? If so, then our planet is not a closed sphere of rock and metal, but a living organism with an inner sun, the same eternal light the ancients revered. The pole, then, becomes not a place of ending, but a gateway, a cosmic door between the outer world of matter and the inner world of spirit. And perhaps that is why the myth of Hyperborea has never died. It is not just a memory of the past. It is an invitation to remember that paradise was never above us, but within us all along. Still, one mystery remains. If the Hyperboreans survived beneath the surface, have they ever returned? Whispers across centuries suggest they have, in the form of visitors from the sky, luminous and ageless, guiding human destiny from beyond. And what follows next will lead us into their return and the legends of the shining messengers. The return of the shining ones. Throughout human history, there have been moments when the sky itself seemed to open, when luminous beings descended to speak, to teach, to warn. In every age, they've been called by different names: gods, angels, divas, star visitors. Yet behind all those titles runs a single thread, an archetype as old as fire. the Shining Ones. And in the ancient lexicon of the North, those Shining Ones were the Hyperboreans. The Greek poets described them as beings clothed in light. The Egyptians depicted their gods with radiant halos and elongated skulls. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, who came from the heavens to shape humanity in their image. The Mayans revered the Kukulkan, the feathered serpent who descended from the sky to teach them the calendar of the stars. Different lands, different names, yet the same pattern. Luminous teachers who appear after cataclysm, bearing the memory of a lost age. In the Orphic hymns, Apollo's return from Hyperborea marked a renewal of the world. He descended in his chariot of light, bringing balance and knowledge back to humankind. The Nordic Eddas told of Odin's arrival from a shining land in the far north, bearing sacred runes and laws. The Hopi recall Pahana, the white brother who will return from the east when the world is ready for purification. Even the Christian and Islamic traditions speak of divine messengers descending from radiant clouds, wrapped in light no mortal eye can bear. Could these be separate recollections of the same phenomenon? The return of Hyperborea's descendants after the ice settled, coming from the inner world or from hidden sanctuaries beneath the poles. If the Hyperboreans possessed knowledge of energy and magnetism, their reappearance might easily have been perceived as celestial, their crafts luminous, their movements silent. To early eyes, they would have seemed divine. Archaeological records offer subtle clues. Petroglyphs in Siberia, northern China, and even the American Southwest show elongated figures surrounded by halos or beams of light. Some float above the ground, others emerge from tunnels or mountain caves. One Siberian carving, dated to at least 8,000 years ago, shows a circular craft emitting rays. The same image found thousands of miles away in ancient Peru. Coincidence? Or a memory of luminous visitors traveling from pole to pole? In the Tibetan Kalachakra texts, Shambhala's sages are said to appear on the surface world whenever humanity faces destruction. They bring technologies of light, wisdom of the cycles, and the power to restore balance. Esoteric writings of the Middle Ages echo the same idea. When the world is lost in shadow, the sons of the North shall walk once more among men. Could this explain the sudden bursts of civilization that appear seemingly out of nowhere? Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, the Olmecs, their astronomical precision, their mastery of geometry, their myths of gods who came from the heavens, all may trace back to these mysterious returns. Each culture remembered the Shining Ones differently, but always as bearers of light after an age of darkness. And then, in the modern era, the pattern reappears. In 1947, the same year Admiral Byrd's expedition allegedly encountered beings within the Arctic, the skies above Roswell, New Mexico, erupted with the most famous crash in UFO history. Reports of glowing disks, metallic crafts, and luminous occupants swept the world. In the decades since, encounters with radiant humanoids have been recorded everywhere, from the deserts of South America to the icy plains of Siberia. What if these visitors are not extraterrestrial at all? What if they are terrestrial, returning from the inner sanctuaries of Hyperborea, re-emerging after thousands of years of silence? Some researchers call this the polar hypothesis of contact. They suggest that the so-called UFO phenomenon is not alien in origin, but a reactivation of an ancient network, the same luminous technology once used by the Hyperboreans to traverse the skies. The beings reported are described not as monstrous, but as serene, human-like, radiant. They do not invade, they observe, as if waiting. Across ancient prophecy, a common phrase recurs: when the ice melts, the old ones shall return. Our age is witnessing precisely that. The Arctic is warming, the permafrost recedes, and secrets long buried begin to surface. Could this environmental transformation be the signal for a new cycle, the reawakening of Hyperborea and the return of its guardians? If so, their message may be the same one recorded in the alleged diary of Admiral Byrd, that the world above is losing balance, that humanity's mastery of fire, now nuclear and digital, threatens to repeat the fall that destroyed the first civilization of light. Perhaps the Shining Ones are not saviors, but reminders. They appear to warn us that the same forces which froze their world may one day return, not by nature's hand, but by our own. They walk the boundary between myth and disclosure, between history and revelation. And as our skies fill with more light than ever before, we must ask, are we witnessing a new beginning, or the final warning from a civilization that already lived through the end? Because the light that descends from the sky may not be new at all. It may be ancient light returning home. The polar bloodlines, traces of Hyperborea in human genetics. Every legend of gods and golden ages eventually circles back to a single question. Were the gods ever human? And if they were, did they leave something of themselves behind? The idea that the Hyperboreans may have survived not only through myth but through lineage has haunted scholars, mystics, and geneticists alike. Ancient records speak of a people of extraordinary vitality, tall, radiant, immune to disease, and capable of living for centuries. To the Greeks, they were demigods. To the Norse, the divine Aesir. To the Hindus, the Devas. But what if these divine traits were not metaphors? What if they pointed to a biological inheritance, one that quietly flows through the veins of humankind even now? In recent decades, genetic studies have uncovered curious anomalies in human DNA, particularly among populations of the far north. Groups in Siberia, Scandinavia, and the Arctic regions of Canada share unique mitochondrial lineages, sequences that don't fit neatly into the accepted migratory patterns of Homo sapiens. They appear ancient, almost as if they predate the last ice age. Some researchers refer to these as ghost lineages, traces of unknown ancestors who interbred with early humans but whose origins are lost. Could these be the genetic fingerprints of the Hyperborean survivors? The notion may seem radical, yet ancient myths consistently describe the arrival of strangers from the north, beings of great stature, pale or luminous skin, and eyes as bright as the morning. The Sumerians called them the Anuna. The Egyptians depicted them as the shining ones of the first time, and the Toltecs spoke of white teachers who came after the flood. Anthropologists often explain these as archetypes of wisdom or the memory of migrations from Eurasia. But the coincidences stretch across continents and epochs. When we map these ancient migrations against genetic data, a pattern emerges. Around 12,000 years ago, the exact period of the Younger Dryas when Hyperborea would have frozen, genetic bottlenecks appear worldwide. Populations shrink, then explode again from small founder groups. New haplogroups suddenly arise. H, I, J, and K in Europe and the Near East, A, C, and D in Asia and the Americas. It's as if new bloodlines appeared almost overnight, advanced, resilient, and carrying a memory of light. Even more intriguing is the discovery of Denisovan DNA in humans across Asia and Oceania. These mysterious hominins vanished long before recorded history, yet their genes appear to enhance immunity and oxygen absorption, traits crucial for surviving extreme climates. The Denisovans were first discovered in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, near the very region ancient maps once linked to Hyperborea. Could the so-called Denisovans have been the biological remnant of the Hyperboreans, or perhaps the first wave of their hybrid descendants? In mythic terms, this genetic inheritance becomes the divine spark, the fragment of celestial light that every culture insists dwells within humanity. In theosophical writings, it is said that modern humans carry the remnant of the radiant race of the North. Even Plato, in his description of the ideal man, spoke of the light that dwells in the blood. It may not be metaphorical. Recent biomedical studies reveal that human hemoglobin emits faint biophotons, measurable particles of light. Every cell in our body radiates them, and the higher the coherence of this light, the healthier and more vital the organism. Could it be that the ancients were right in calling the Hyperboreans the Shining Ones, that their physical and spiritual mastery manifested literally as light, a higher form of bioenergetic harmony that we, their descendants, still carry in dormant form. The Norse sagas tell of the Vanir, another northern race known for their beauty and magic, the ability to shape reality with sound and vibration. Some esoteric researchers believe this power was an inheritance from Hyperborea, an advanced understanding of resonance, frequency, and light within living matter. If their science was based not on destruction, but on harmony, their very DNA might have been tuned differently, not better, but more aligned with the Earth's frequency before the Great Shift. Modern genetics can't yet measure light in consciousness, but it can trace migrations, and the migrations tell a story. From the Arctic Circle southward, through Siberia into Europe, and eastward into Asia, precisely the paths that myths claim were taken by Hyperborea's refugees. Along those paths bloom the earliest civilizations, each claiming descent from shining ancestors. It's as if humanity's renaissance after the Ice Age was not spontaneous at all, but guided, genetically and spiritually, by a handful of surviving lineages carrying the memory of the lost North. Perhaps this is why ancient royalty claimed solar descent. Pharaohs were called sons of Ra. The kings of the Incas were children of the sun. The early Greek heroes, born of Apollo. They weren't claiming divinity, they were tracing ancestry. They were trying to preserve a bloodline that began under the northern light. And if that inheritance is real, even in fragments, it means the story of Hyperborea is not finished. It continues in us, in our fascination with the stars, in our pursuit of light, in the restlessness that drives us toward forgotten origins. Because maybe the Hyperboreans were not gods after all. Maybe they were what we are destined to become again. Luminous beings who remember that knowledge and harmony are one and the same. And somewhere, buried deep in the ice and the genome alike, the next clue awaits, written not in myth, but in the language of stone. The polar monuments, megaliths, obelisks, and the memory of light. When humanity first began to build in stone, it was not to shelter the body, but to preserve the soul of memory. Every monolith, every temple, every tower pointing to the heavens seems to echo the same hidden geometry, a geometry that traces northward toward a vanished homeland beneath the aurora's glow. In Egypt, the obelisks were called Tekken, fingers of the sun. They were designed to capture and project light, marking the movement of the sun at its highest point. A frozen echo of the endless daylight once said to shine over Hyperborea. The oldest of them, now scattered across the world, form an invisible network aligned to the solstices and to the ancient celestial north. Their tips were once sheathed in gold or electrum, shining day and night like miniature suns. But what they truly represented was remembrance, a physical anchor to the cosmic axis that had shifted when the Earth tilted and the northern paradise was lost. Far to the west, in the wind-swept plains of Britain, the megaliths of Stonehenge stand as silent instruments of light. Each solstice, the rising sun pierces the heart of the circle, illuminating a stone corridor with mathematical precision. Yet beneath this geometry lies a deeper mystery. When those stones were erected, their alignment pointed not to today's pole, but to a different celestial orientation, one that matches the Earth's precession roughly 12,000 years ago. It's as though Stonehenge was built to mirror the heavens as they appeared before the Great Shift, when Hyperborea still basked in warmth. Across the ocean, in the deserts of Egypt's western frontier, the Nabta Playa stone circle predates Stonehenge by millennia. Its stellar alignments correspond to the constellation of Orion, but as it appeared around 2500 BCE, the same epoch repeatedly associated with lost golden ages. Even in that remote Sahara plain, the builders looked north for reference, as though the memory of the pole and the civilization that once flourished there was embedded in their consciousness. The farther we travel, the more the pattern repeats. At Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, the pyramid of the sun aligns with the setting of the Pleiades, a star cluster long linked to cycles of rebirth and the seven sisters of the north. In the Himalayas, the stupas of Tibet are crowned with spires designed to focus energy upward, symbolizing the axis of the world. And in Angkor, the temple's layout forms a mirror of Draco, the constellation circling the northern pole in ancient times. Everywhere, the same architecture of remembrance, monuments oriented not merely to the sun and stars, but to the lost north itself. The deeper question is why? Why did the ancients insist on encoding a direction that, to them, was unreachable and frozen? Why did they measure the sky as though remembering a different Earth? Perhaps these were not just religious acts. Perhaps they were calibration points, attempts to keep time with the heavens, to maintain resonance with the axis that once connected Earth to the cosmic source of life and knowledge. In that sense, the monuments were not built to worship gods, but to sustain a dialogue with the lost frequency of Hyperborea, the world before the tilt. Esoteric traditions call these structures stone memories. Each alignment, each shadow cast at solstice is a syllable in a language of light. When read together, they form a message that stretches across continents. Remember where you came from. Even modern science is beginning to catch the faint echo of that message. Global surveys of megalithic sites show that many fall along geomagnetic lines, places where Earth's natural energy fields converge. It is as if the builders understood the planet as a living grid, an organism whose heartbeat pulsed through certain nodes. At the top of that ancient grid, the axis, the pole, was the crown chakra of the world. Hyperborea was not merely land, it was the planet's heart of consciousness. When that axis shifted, the old connection was broken, and so the ancients built monuments to realign themselves with the sky. The obelisks, the pyramids, the circles, all are earthly reflections of an older cosmic order. Their builders may have been descendants of those who fled the north, determined to preserve their world's geometry before memory faded completely. In that sense, every sacred site we see today, every temple that catches the first light of dawn, is a map of a world that no longer exists. And yet, the light that strikes those stones each year still travels from the same sun that once shone over Hyperborea. Light remembers, so do we, because the monuments are not relics of superstition, they are instruments of continuity. Through them, the voice of the polar past still speaks, waiting for us to listen. And soon, our journey will follow that voice southward, to the other pole, where a hidden mirror of Hyperborea may still lie beneath the ice. Antarctica, the mirror of the north. The ancient world spoke of two poles, twin gates through which the life of the planet breathed in and out. If the northern one was Hyperborea, the land of light, then its southern counterpart was said to be a mirror world, born from the same cosmic symmetry. In Greek cosmology, it was Antichthonia, the opposite Earth. Today we call it Antarctica, and its silence hides more questions than the rest of the world combined. Officially, Antarctica was first sighted in 1820. Unofficially, it appeared on maps long before that. The Peary Race Chart, the Orontius Phineas map, and Boache's 1739 world map all show an ice-free Antarctic coastline, rivers, valleys, mountain ranges matching those we now see only through radar. These depictions predate modern discovery by centuries, suggesting that someone, somehow, saw the continent before it froze. Could it be that Antarctica was once inhabited? Could it be the southern Hyperborea, the mirror land of the lost north? In mythic geometry, the Earth's poles were never opposites but complements, entrances and exits of the same axis mundi. When one world fell into shadow, the other held its reflection. If a civilization perished in the north 12 millennia ago, perhaps another endured in the south, hidden beneath the ice that soon followed. For centuries, explorers have whispered of strange anomalies beneath Antarctica's vast white expanse. Radar imaging from the 1950s onward revealed mountain ranges, the Gamburtsev Mountains, buried beneath 2 miles of ice, stretching nearly 1,000 miles long. Their peaks are sharp, uneroded, and geologically young. They should not exist. Beneath them, instruments detect heat signatures and vast cavities, hollow zones where the temperature is far warmer than physics predicts. Some researchers speculate that geothermal vents keep entire valleys unfrozen, creating hidden oases sealed off for millions of years. The military has always been drawn to such places. In 1938, Nazi Germany launched the Schwabenland expedition, officially to survey whaling grounds, but documents later declassified mention Base 211, a facility allegedly established in a vast ice cavern along Queen Maud Land. After the war, Allied intelligence scoured the Antarctic for evidence of secret installations. None was ever confirmed, yet rumors persist that the Nazis sought remnants of an ancient polar civilization, the same one their occult division, the Ahnenerbe, identified as Hyperborea's southern reflection. A decade later, in 1947, Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd's massive U.S. Navy expedition, deployed 13 ships and 4,000 men to Antarctica. Officially, it was for training and scientific research. Unofficially, it lasted only a few weeks before being abruptly terminated. Byrd's later statements hinted at a new enemy capable of flying from pole to pole with incredible speed. His words were dismissed as metaphor, yet they echo his alleged Arctic account of contact with luminous beings beneath the north. Could the same power that once ruled Hyperborea also guard its southern twin? Modern science adds more layers to the mystery. In 2006, NASA satellites detected massive gravitational anomalies beneath Wilkes Land, circular depressions nearly 300 miles wide, with densities suggesting buried metallic structures or impact craters. Some geologists believe these mark the site of an ancient asteroid strike. Others whisper of something engineered, perhaps the shattered remains of a city entombed before the Ice Age. Even more puzzling are the magnetic anomalies recorded by orbiting satellites, vast symmetrical fields that defy geological logic. It is as if something beneath the continent still hums with power. Antarctica also hides Lake Vostok, a subglacial sea sealed off for at least 15 million years. Drilling operations in 2012 reportedly retrieved microbial life unlike any known species, and traces of metallic fragments whose analysis was never released. Whistleblowers later claimed the discovery of structures on the lakebed, suggesting artificial origin. Official silence followed. The more the ice melts, the more these secrets surface, both literally and politically. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, remains one of the most restrictive pacts in human history. It forbids all military presence, limits exploration, and keeps vast zones off limits even to scientists. Nations that compete bitterly elsewhere maintain an eerie harmony here. What could possibly require such global secrecy unless there is something beneath the ice too powerful or too ancient to reveal? Some esoteric historians believe that when Hyperborea fell, its survivors split. One group fled southward through subterranean passages, emerging in what was then a temperate Antarctica. There, they built a mirror civilization, the White Kingdom, described in Tibetan and Hindu texts as the hidden refuge of the gods. When the axis shifted again, their paradise froze, entombing the last memory of the world before the flood. If this legend holds any truth, then Antarctica is not a frozen wasteland but a mausoleum, the crystallized remains of a civilization older than all recorded history. The cold did not destroy it. It preserved it. Perhaps this is why every probe, every satellite image, every unauthorized expedition seems to brush against silence. Perhaps beneath the ice, the light of Hyperborea still burns, inverted, waiting for the world to remember its reflection. Because if the North was the dawn of civilization, the South may be its mirror at dusk, the last chapter of a story written in ice, waiting for the courage of discovery to thaw it. And the next step in our journey will peel back that veil into the secret archives and hidden testimonies of those who claim to have seen what sleeps beneath the frozen continent. The Antarctic Files, Secret Expeditions, and Suppressed Discoveries. The story of Antarctica is not only written in ice, it is written in redacted pages, coded dispatches, and the nervous hesitations of those who saw too much. What the public knows is geography. Glaciers, research stations, penguins. What remains hidden in the archives tells a different tale, that under the endless white, something waits, something ancient enough to unsettle both science and faith. When Admiral Richard Byrd returned from Operation High Jump in 1947, he gave an interview in Chile that few have forgotten. He warned that the United States must prepare to defend itself against flying objects that could move from pole to pole at tremendous speeds. Newspapers printed the words, then quickly retracted them. Byrd was silenced, his personal diary locked away. Decades later, a document claiming to be that diary surfaced, describing an encounter with a land beyond the pole, lush and green, inhabited by luminous beings who spoke of a world within. Whether genuine or fabricated, its detail is unnerving. But Byrd was not the only explorer to vanish into mystery. In 1959, the same year the Antarctic Treaty was signed, a Soviet geological team operating near Vostok Station reportedly stumbled upon an entrance to a vast ice cavern. Their radio transmissions ceased abruptly. Weeks later, a rescue mission found their camp abandoned, the ice around it scorched as if by intense heat. The event was classified under the code name Project Nadir. All records disappeared into Soviet military archives. After the Cold War, fragments of those files surfaced through defectors and leaks. One memo described metallic structures of unknown origin deep beneath the ice, along with spherical rooms emitting internal light. The description matched what later U.S. reconnaissance satellites detected under Wilkes Land, a colossal circular anomaly too symmetrical to be natural. Analysts speculated it might be a buried impact crater. Others, quietly, compared its geometry to the sun temples of ancient Hyperborea. By the late 1990s, both NASA and the European Space Agency had mapped gravitational and magnetic anomalies beneath the continent. Publicly, they attributed these to mantle variations. Privately, according to whistleblower Dr. Charles Hollins, satellite data revealed linear magnetic patterns, straight lines running hundreds of miles, intersecting at 90-degree angles. No natural formation on Earth behaves that way, Hollins wrote before his abrupt disappearance in 2003. His colleagues dismissed his claims as delusion, yet his raw data vanished along with him. In 2016, a team from the University of Edinburgh conducted ice-penetrating radar scans near Princess Elizabeth Land. They reported a subglacial mountain range with rectilinear features. Within months, the team's funding was pulled, and the research director, Dr. Maria De Luca, resigned, citing security restrictions. When journalists requested access to her findings, government agencies invoked the Antarctic Treaty's confidentiality clauses, an unusual move for geological research. Why would stone formations and magnetic readings require secrecy? Why would Antarctica, the one continent supposedly dedicated to peace and science, be protected by military enforcement, satellite blackouts, and restricted airspace? Some independent researchers believe the answer lies in what the first German and later American expeditions actually found. Declassified fragments from British archives mention artifacts of metallic composition recovered from beneath 2 miles of ice, stored at an undisclosed naval facility. Another source, allegedly from the 1952 Majestic 12 correspondence, describes a buried complex of non-human design, date indeterminate, accessible only by aerial transport. None of this has ever been confirmed, yet the consistency between testimonies is chilling. A recurring phrase appears in many of these documents, the Southern Mirror. It suggests that Antarctica is more than a continent. It is the counterpart of the lost North, the inverted reflection of Hyperborea. Some accounts speak of crystalline towers buried under ice domes, still emitting faint electromagnetic pulses. Others mention symbols etched into metallic surfaces, identical to ancient carvings found in Siberia and the Arctic. Could these be remnants of the same civilization, preserved by the cold that destroyed it? In 2019, a private satellite operated by an independent independent research group released images showing a massive hexagonal structure protruding from the ice near the Queen Maud Range. Within 48 hours, the images were removed from all platforms under legal injunctions, citing national security. The group's website was taken offline. No further explanation followed. The pattern is too familiar. Discovery, suppression, silence. Whatever sleeps beneath Antarctica has been seen and hidden repeatedly across the last century. And each time the truth begins to thaw, the world's powers close ranks as if guarding a secret they can neither deny nor reveal. Perhaps the secret is not about extraterrestrials or ancient technology at all. Perhaps it is about us, about the origin of humanity, the cyclic nature of civilizations, and the knowledge that the rise and fall of worlds is not a story of the past, but a pattern destined to repeat. Because if Hyperborea's mirror truly lies beneath the southern ice, then its rediscovery could shatter the timeline of human history. It could reveal that our species is far older, far wiser, and far more fragile than we imagine. And maybe that is why the truth remains buried, not because we cannot find it, but because we are not yet ready to face what it means. But the ice cannot hold forever, and when it breaks, the memories of two poles, north and south, light and shadow, will converge once more. The language of the gods, symbols, scripts, and polar codes. Long before the first tablets of Sumer, before hieroglyphs or cuneiform, there were marks, lines and spirals etched into rock by hands that knew geometry better than survival. They appear in caves from France to Siberia, in deserts of Australia and the frozen cliffs of the Arctic Circle. Thousands of years apart, yet identical in form. The spiral, the trident, the cross within a circle. These are the oldest symbols known to man, and when seen together, they tell a story older than language itself, a story that points north. Archaeologists once called them universal motifs, products of the collective imagination. But as the 20th century advanced, pattern recognition changed everything. In 1968, the linguist Dr. Anna Salvatore compared petroglyphs from the Altai Mountains with carvings found in pre-dynastic Egypt and early Cycladic islands. Her conclusion was shocking. The symbols were not decorative. They formed a coherent set, a proto-script, consistent across sites separated by oceans. She called it polar script, the language of the first civilization. Her research was dismissed, her funding cut, and her findings vanished into academic obscurity. Yet copies of her notes survive, revealing something extraordinary. At the heart of the polar script lies a recurring emblem, a circle divided by a cross, 4 rivers flowing outward from a central point. To the Greeks, this was the symbol of Hyperborea, the circular land encircling the world's northern mountain, Rupes Nigra. To the Sumerians, it became the emblem of the Anu, the god of heaven, whose star was the pole. To the Native Americans, it was the medicine wheel, representing the 4 directions of creation, and in modern symbology, it is still with us, the compass, the wheel of the sun, the cross of earth, the mark of orientation, of balance, of memory. If the same symbol arose independently across every culture, then coincidence is an unsatisfying answer. It suggests a shared origin, a source civilization whose language was carried outward by survivors after the polar cataclysm. Perhaps those who fled Hyperborea carried not only knowledge but the seed of communication itself, the code by which humanity would remember them. Another striking example is the trident, the 3-pronged symbol associated with Poseidon, Shiva, and countless deities of the sea and sky. In Hyperborean lore, it represented the triple forces of creation: light, vibration, and form. Across time, it became the thunderbolt of Zeus, the Vajra of Indra, the scepter of Osiris, the weapon or tool of divine power. Always 3, always bound by the circle of light. Could this symbol have been the scientific notation of a lost physics? The ancient understanding of frequency and energy that once sustained the Hyperborean world? Even alphabets bear the fingerprints of this forgotten script. The earliest Greek letters, the Phoenician runes, the Norse futhark, the Sanskrit Devanagari, all share geometric roots that trace back to the same polar pattern. Letters once represented not sounds, but forces, each stroke an angle of the sun, each curve a path of the stars around the pole. Writing, then, was not invented, it was remembered. Linguists have long noted the eerie similarities among words for light and sun across distant tongues. Sul, Sul, Surya, Helios, El, Il. The consonant patterns repeat across Indo-European, Semitic, and even pre-American languages. Could this be the remnant of a single sacred phonetic core? A language that once unified human expression before fragmentation and migration tore it apart? Ancient myths support this idea. The Greeks said the Hyperboreans communicated through song and pure thought. The Hindus claimed the Devas spoke Sanskrit of the gods, a vibratory language where sound shaped reality. In Nordic legend, Odin learned the runes by sacrificing himself to the cosmic tree, by remembering them from a previous world. All of them speak of words as power, sound as creation, the exact same principle described in modern quantum resonance, where frequency shapes matter. What if the first writing was not for storytelling or record-keeping at all, but for harmonizing with the Earth's own frequencies? What if the Hyperboreans encoded not language, but vibration, using geometry to stabilize their world's balance? A technology of consciousness written in stone. Supporting evidence lies hidden in architecture, when the polar symbols, the spiral, the cross, the trident, are overlaid upon sacred sites. A precise geometry emerges. The pyramids, Stonehenge, Angkor, and Teotihuacan align perfectly with the lines of the polar script, as though the same plan guided every builder. Every line returns to the same central axis, the pole. Every monument, every language, every myth points home. Perhaps that is why the ancients called writing the gift of the gods, because it was not invented by men. It was given to them by those who remembered the light. And perhaps that gift was also a warning that when the symbols are forgotten, when the words lose their alignment with the cosmos, the world itself begins to fall out of balance. Our modern languages, fragmented and disconnected, may be the echoes of that lost harmony. Yet deep within their roots, the ancient code still hums, waiting to be recognized again. And the next revelation will follow that code into the heart of power, the secret orders and ancient brotherhoods who have guarded Hyperborea's memory across the ages. The secret guardians, orders of the North and the legacy of the light. History is written by kings, but memory is preserved by initiates. Throughout every age, when empires burned and libraries fell, there were always those who carried fragments of a greater truth, wanderers, priests, builders, and philosophers who seemed to serve an invisible source. They spoke of a northern light, a pure wisdom older than time, and a lineage that began long before the rise of nations. They called themselves the Keepers of the North, though history knows them by other names. The first were the Druids of ancient Europe, custodians of sacred geometry and astronomy. They built their stone circles not only as temples, but as instruments of alignment, calibrated to the path of the sun around the polar star. Roman chroniclers described them as guardians of a northern doctrine, believing that the soul itself descended from the stars above Thule, the mythical land beyond the north wind. The Druids never wrote their knowledge. They sang it, passed it through sound, as if remembering a time when vibration itself was language. From their teachings, later orders were born. The Pythagoreans of Greece inherited the same geometry, calling it the music of the spheres. They believed that harmony, numerical, celestial, and moral, bound all things together. Their master, Pythagoras, claimed he had traveled to lands beyond the north to learn from a brotherhood of shining men. When he returned, he brought with him the secret of proportion, the same ratios that govern our temples and our blood. Centuries later, the mysteries of Delphi continued to invoke Hyperborea directly. The priestesses of Apollo declared that the god spent half the year among the Hyperboreans, returning each spring to deliver his prophecy. Delphi itself was built upon a geometry oriented northward toward the lost homeland. Its very name, Delphos, meaning womb, symbolized the world's axis, the passage between realms. As the classical world fell, the northern current retreated underground. In medieval Europe, it resurfaced through the Knights Templar, warrior monks whose architecture and rituals encoded ancient astronomical knowledge. Their churches aligned with solstices. Their symbols, twin pillars, rose crosses, radiant suns, mirrored the geometry of Hyperborea. Templar legends spoke of a light from the polar star, a power to awaken divine knowledge within man. Some historians believe the Templars rediscovered fragments of pre-flood maps, perhaps even traces of the northern continent itself, during their excavations in Jerusalem. After their suppression in the 14th century, the same light passed into secret brotherhoods, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and the Hermetic orders of the Renaissance. Their writings speak openly of the land of the north and the everlasting sun. The Rosicrucian Fama Fraternitatis describes sages who departed toward the poles to dwell in the place where night and day are one. Freemasonic symbolism, the compass and square, is nothing less than the polar cross, the same sign found on ancient Hyperborean maps. Their lodges faced east, but their initiations always began with the invocation of the north, the place of origin. Why the north? Because in every esoteric tradition, north is not darkness, but memory, the gate through which the soul descends and returns. It is the unseen pillar, the axis around which creation turns. For the ancients, that axis was physical, the world's spine, rooted in Hyperborea. For the mystics, it became spiritual, the inner pole of awakening, the compass of the soul. In the 17th and 18th centuries, European mystics began to speak openly of a polar doctrine. Writers like René Guénon and Julius Evola traced all civilizations back to an Arctic origin, a primordial center of the world. They claimed that secret orders across Asia and Europe preserved fragments of its wisdom in Tibet, in the Himalayas, in the Arctic temples of the Lapps and Sami. According to them, Hyperborea was both physical and metaphysical, a lost continent and a symbol of inner perfection, a state of being that humanity once possessed and will one day reclaim. But there are more tangible threads. Within the archives of the early Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky wrote of the Brotherhood of Shambhala, a conclave of adepts dwelling in the far north, guarding the spiritual heritage of the world. Her sources, Tibetan lamas and Indian mystics, claimed that when the poles shifted, the Hyperboreans withdrew into hidden cities beneath the mountains, awaiting the next cycle. Their signs, she said, appear in secret emblems, the swastika, the triskelion, the radiant wheel, all descendants of the polar cross. Even today, many secret societies trace their lineage to this doctrine of light. The Golden Dawn, the Thule Society, the Order of the Polar Star, all claim to channel teachings from the luminous north. Some twisted that myth for power, others sought its true meaning, that enlightenment is remembrance, that to awaken is to return to the axis from which humanity fell. It is no coincidence that the very word initiation means to begin again. Each ritual death and rebirth, each symbolic passage through darkness toward light, mirrors the myth of Hyperborea, the descent into ice, and the promise of return. The secret orders were not merely preserving ancient secrets, they were enacting the cosmic drama of the lost north in human form. Perhaps that is why their symbols persist in our modern world, on flags, monuments, and global organizations. The polar memory hides in plain sight, because even as civilizations forget, there are always those who remember, who guard the geometry of the world until it is ready to be revealed again. And that revelation, some say, is close. As the ice melts and the poles awaken, the guardians are stirring once more. The ancient brotherhoods, scattered yet connected, are beginning to speak the same word, return. But to understand what they are preparing for, we must first uncover the doctrine they protected, the Hyperborean science of light and vibration, said to grant mastery over matter itself. The science of the gods, Hyperborean technology, and the lost physics of light. Every civilization tells stories of gods wielding weapons of light, floating chariots, and towers that shone brighter than the sun. We have long dismissed these tales as symbols of imagination. Yet, when examined through the lens of modern physics, those descriptions sound less like fantasy and more like the memory of a lost, luminous technology. The Hyperboreans were said to be masters of light and vibration. They built cities of crystal, towers that hummed with energy, and temples that resonated with the very pulse of the earth. Their power, according to legend, came not from fire or metal, but from harmony, a science that unified matter, sound, and consciousness. This was the science of the gods, and its traces still flicker through the myths of every ancient culture. In the Hindu Vedas, there are descriptions of vimanas, aerial chariots powered by sound and liquid fire. They moved silently, emitted dazzling radiance, and could hover motionless in the sky. Sanskrit scholars note that the word vimana literally means measured out through vibration. In Greek lore, Apollo's golden chariot, which carried him to and from Hyperborea, was said to emit a song of perfect pitch. The Mayans spoke of houses of light that could heal the sick and stones that sang when touched by the sun. These are not poetic coincidences. They are fragments of a shared technological memory. Modern acoustics reveals that sound and vibration can indeed move matter, levitate objects, and alter molecular structures. Experiments in sonoluminescence show that sound waves focused in liquid can produce flashes of light, literally turning vibration into radiance. Could this be the principle behind the Hyperborean temples of light, where sound harmonics and sunlight fuse to generate energy? Perhaps the ancients harnessed a form of resonance we no longer understand, one that bridged physical energy and consciousness itself. Esoteric traditions describe this principle as vril, odic force, or prana, the life current that flows through all matter. The Hyperboreans, it is said, learned to amplify this current through crystalline structures and magnetic alignment. The massive crystals described in myth, mountains of shining ice that glowed from within, could have been energy resonators, tuned to the planet's magnetic field. When the axis shifted, those resonators may have destabilized, causing the environmental collapse that ended their world. This theory finds eerie support in modern geology. Across the Arctic Circle, scientists have found magnetic anomalies, regions where the field strength spikes unexpectedly. In Siberia and Greenland, these align with circular stone formations and strange metallic deposits. Could these sites be the petrified remains of Hyperborean power centers, now buried under the permafrost? Legends also speak of a great crystal, or black sun, a device that radiated light from the pole itself, sustaining the world's eternal day. The symbol of the black sun, later corrupted in the modern era, once represented the invisible source of energy within the earth, the hidden sun of Hyperborea. Ancient seers described it as both physical and metaphysical, the point where divine light enters matter. If such a reactor existed, a planetary energy system built around magnetic harmonics, its disruption could have literally altered Earth's balance, triggering the polar shift that froze the North. To the Hyperboreans, this energy was not separate from consciousness. They believed that light obeyed will and that harmony could shape reality. In their philosophy, science and spirit were one. The external technology reflected the inner mastery of the self. Only those in perfect resonance with the music of creation could command the forces of light. This concept survives in fragments: the manna of Polynesia, the Heka of Egypt, the Logos of Greece, the word of power in every sacred text. Each is a remnant of the Hyperborean equation, that thought, vibration, and matter are different expressions of the same underlying energy. In modern terms, it suggests they had achieved what we call unified field knowledge, an understanding that energy, gravity, and consciousness are not separate forces but manifestations of one living field. If so, the magic of Hyperborea was not illusion but resonance, a science that transcended destruction because it worked with nature's flow, not against it. Perhaps this is why the ancients described the fall of Hyperborea not as an explosion, but as a fading. The harmony broke, the music of the world went silent, and when the balance between consciousness and creation collapsed, the light that once powered their civilization withdrew into the earth, into the so-called inner sun. The survivors, scattered across the globe, tried to preserve fragments of this lost physics. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the megalithic circles all function as harmonic chambers, amplifying the Earth's natural frequencies. Our ancestors may have built them to mimic the power centers of Hyperborea, hoping to reawaken the resonance that once sustained paradise. Even modern scientists edge toward rediscovering this truth. Quantum researchers speak of coherence, the alignment of energy at all levels of matter, creating systems that self-stabilize and radiate order. To the Hyperboreans, coherence was not a theory, it was life itself. And if humanity could relearn that harmony, if we could unite technology and consciousness as they once did, then perhaps the gates of Hyperborea would open again, not in the sky or beneath the ice, but within the human mind. Because the real secret of their science was never power, it was remembrance. And remembrance, as we will see next, was the essence of their faith, a spiritual technology that saw enlightenment and energy as one and the same. The solar doctrine, the spiritual science of light. To the people of Hyperborea, light was not merely illumination, it was consciousness itself, the breath of the divine moving through the universe. Their science and spirituality were one because they saw no boundary between matter and mind. They called this harmony the solar doctrine, the understanding that every form of life is a spark of the same infinite radiance, and that enlightenment is simply remembering one's own luminosity. Every surviving myth that hints at Hyperborea echoes this idea. The Greeks believed Apollo spent half the year among the Hyperboreans to renew his light. The Hindus spoke of Surya Loka, the realm of the sun, where souls bathed in golden fire before returning to earth. The Egyptians said that Ra's true temple lay not in Egypt, but beyond the northern winds, where he rested at the end of each day. All of these stories preserve fragments of a single teaching, that the human spirit is solar, a miniature sun bound to a cosmic source. In the Hyperborean worldview, the universe was not a machine, but a living symphony. Every star was a consciousness, every planet a note, and Earth was a resonant instrument tuned to the music of the sun. To live in harmony with that music was to live without decay or disease. To fall out of tune was to invite entropy, chaos, and darkness. Thus, their temples were not houses of worship, but tuning chambers, places where sound, geometry, and light brought the body and soul back into resonance with the cosmic chord. In the Book of Xian, an ancient text preserved in fragments through theosophy, the Hyperborean masters are called the sons of the fire mist. They are described as beings who knew the power of the inner sun and who fed upon the radiance of space. This is more than mythic poetry. It describes a state of consciousness in which energy is drawn directly from the field, what modern science calls zero-point energy. To the Hyperboreans, this was spiritual practice. The act of meditation was not escape from the world, but alignment with it. Every ritual of their solar doctrine revolved around three principles: light, sound, and breath. Light symbolized awareness, the spark of perception that gives form to reality. Sound represented creation, vibration made manifest through will. Breath connected the two, the living current that united the outer sun with the inner fire of the soul. In their temples, initiates learned to breathe in rhythm with the solar cycles, to chant tones that mirrored the harmonic frequencies of the earth, and to visualize the radiant current of consciousness flowing through all things. Through this practice, they believed, one could awaken the luminous body, an energy form immune to death. Echoes of these teachings survive in every major spiritual tradition. The Egyptian Ka, the Hindu Atman, the Tibetan rainbow body, the Christian light of Christ within, all stem from the same realization that divinity is not external but internal. The Hyperboreans did not worship a distant god. They cultivated godhood within themselves. Their science was devotion. Their devotion was physics. The architecture of their philosophy was reflected in their cities. At the center stood a great radiant sphere, a symbolic sun that represented both the physical star and the inner soul of the people. The city itself was arranged in concentric rings, echoing the structure of the atom, the solar system, and the heart. This geometry reappears in Plato's description of Atlantis, in the mandalas of Tibet, in the medicine wheels of the Americas. Each is a reflection of the same cosmic design, the structure of consciousness made visible. But the solar doctrine was not only metaphysical, it carried moral weight. To the Hyperboreans, evil was simply disharmony, ignorance of the light. They believed that the universe itself was benevolent, but that humanity's forgetfulness could distort its harmony. Their mission, therefore, was to remember, to realign, to maintain balance. This is why, in their myth, the fall of Hyperborea is not described as punishment, but as sorrow. The moment the world lost its tune, the axis shifted, the resonance broke, and paradise froze into silence. Yet the doctrine also promised renewal. Every cycle of darkness was followed by a new dawn. Every age of ice would eventually thaw, and when the human spirit remembered its origin, the light would return, not from the sky, but from within. Perhaps this is why every religion after Hyperborea associates enlightenment with sunrise, rebirth, and awakening. The very word illumination comes from the same root as sun. Even the halo that crowns saints and gods is an echo of the Hyperborean radiance, a reminder that divinity is self-illumination. Modern science, in its search for consciousness within quantum fields, may be rediscovering what the Hyperboreans already knew, that awareness is not a byproduct of matter, but its foundation. To them, the universe did not create consciousness. Consciousness created the universe. Light was not a metaphor. It was the blueprint of reality. If this is true, then the solar doctrine was not religion. It was the original physics of existence, the technology of the soul. And perhaps this is what the secret brotherhoods preserved, not formulas for domination, but the memory of harmony. The ancients warned that when humanity forgets this truth, it repeats the fall, mistaking knowledge for wisdom, power for illumination. But when we remember, we rebuild the bridge between spirit and matter, and the gates of Hyperborea open once more. And those gates, as the old texts claim, are not in heaven or on maps, they are in the stars. The next revelation takes us there. The star maps of the gods, celestial alignments, and the path back to Hyperborea. The ancients said that Hyperborea was the land beneath the never-setting sun. But in truth, it may have also been the land beneath the never-setting stars. Every civilization that remembered the Old North left behind not only myths and symbols, but maps, celestial maps. When the Greek astronomer Hipparchus charted the heavens in the 2nd century BCE, he recorded something few noticed: the slow drift of the stars around a shifting pole. He had rediscovered the Earth's precession, a cosmic clock ticking once every 26,000 years. Yet ancient temples, some built 10,000 years before him, already accounted for that movement. It was as though their builders had seen the heavens turn for eons, or had inherited records from those who did. In Hyperborean tradition, the pole star was not a fixed light, but the eye of God, the eternal watcher at the center of creation. Around it, the heavens revolved like a wheel of fire. The ancients called this point the navel of the world, the cosmic axis linking Earth to eternity. When the planet's tilt changed, the celestial pole shifted from one star to another, and each transition marked the end of an age. If we trace those transitions backward, we find that around 12,000 BCE, the very era of Hyperborea's supposed fall, the pole star was not Polaris, but Thuban, in the constellation Draco, the dragon. It is no coincidence that ancient temples from Egypt to China are aligned with Thuban. The Great Pyramid's northern shaft points directly to it. The dragon was the celestial guardian of the polar axis, the serpent of the heavens coiled around the world's center. Could this star alignment preserve the memory of the original sky that shone above Hyperborea? Many ancient cultures said yes. The Chinese called Thuban Tianyi, the heavenly pivot. The Persians built temples to Mithra, the god of the celestial bull, who defeated the dragon to realign the cosmos, a myth of axial rebirth. The Norse envisioned the constellation as Nidhogg, the serpent gnawing at the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, an allegory of precession itself. Everywhere, the same image, a cosmic dragon circling the pole, guarding the gate between worlds. To find Hyperborea, the ancients implied, one must follow the dragon to the star at the center of its coils. Even the design of sacred sites seems to mirror this celestial geometry. If we connect Giza, Baalbek, and Stonehenge on a global map, their orientations form a spiral, matching the rotation of the northern constellations around the pole circa 10,000 BCE. Angkor Wat, when viewed from above, forms the outline of Draco's head, while Teotihuacan's pyramids trace Orion's belt, the mirror of the heavens on Earth. It is as if the builders were recreating the lost sky of Hyperborea, preserving it in stone long after the true northern stars had shifted away. But why? Because according to legend, the stars themselves were the key. Hyperborean navigators, priests of the sun and stars, used not compasses, but harmonic resonance to travel. They believed that every star emitted a signature frequency, and that by aligning body and mind with that vibration, one could traverse great distances, not just across the world, but across dimensions. Their sacred journeys, described as riding the beam of the North Star, might be metaphors for consciousness itself, or literal accounts of interdimensional travel through the cosmic axis. This idea reappears in every esoteric system. The Egyptians called it the Ladder of Light. The Tibetans called it the Rainbow Bridge. The Greeks called it the Road of Souls. All describe the same ascent, from the earthly pole to the celestial one, the path home to Hyperborea. For the ancients, dying was not an ending, but a return to that northern light. The soul, guided by the pole star, retraced the spiral of the heavens back to its origin. Modern astrophysics may unintentionally echo this myth. At the exact location of the northern celestial pole lies not only Polaris, but a faint radio emission, the cosmic microwave background's coldest point, a literal cold spot in the sky that some physicists struggle to explain. Could it be coincidence that the coldest region of the universe aligns with the mythic land of eternal light? To the Hyperboreans, light and cold were not opposites, they were balance. Their world existed at the threshold of both, where energy and stillness met. The great astronomer Johannes Kepler once wrote that geometry is the mind of God made visible. Perhaps the Hyperboreans understood that truth better than anyone. Their star maps were not only astronomical charts, they were metaphysical diagrams. Each constellation represented an aspect of the human spirit. Draco, the guardian; Ursa Major, the mother; Lyra, the harp of harmony. Together, they formed the celestial anatomy of the soul. When the axis shifted and Hyperborea vanished, humanity lost not only its homeland, but its cosmic map. The temples, obelisks, and myths we inherited are fragments of that navigation system, the roadmap back to alignment. To rediscover Hyperborea is to remember the coordinates of consciousness itself. Perhaps this is why our species has always looked to the stars with longing. The astronomer's telescope and the shaman's vision serve the same purpose: to find our place in the great pattern, to locate the axis around which all things turn. We search not for aliens or gods, but for the memory of home. And as our modern satellites once again trace the poles, as new constellations are discovered beyond the veil, we may finally complete the map. The cosmic path that leads from the frozen ruins of Earth to the eternal radiance of our origin. Because the stars above are not distant suns, they are reminders, windows to a world that still waits at the top of the sky. The cataclysm and the silence. How Hyperborea fell. Every civilization tells of a great ending. Floods, fires, rains of stone, cosmic retribution written into myth. But beneath the poetry lies geology, and beneath geology, memory. For the Earth itself remembers what humanity cannot. The fall of Hyperborea was not a single event. It was a convergence, a perfect storm of cosmic and terrestrial forces that struck when the world's balance was already fragile. Ancient chronicles call it the great turning of the sky, the night of the sun, the day when the moon fell still. Modern science gives it another name, the Younger Dryas Cataclysm. Around 12,000 years ago, the same period when glaciers advanced, sea levels rose, and every trace of a northern civilization was wiped from the face of the earth. But what caused it? Geological evidence points to a violent chain reaction. At the end of the last ice age, fragments of a massive comet, perhaps from the Taurid complex, slammed into the northern hemisphere. Layers of iridium, microspherules, and carbon ash discovered from Greenland to North America tell of continent-wide fires. Temperatures plummeted overnight. The planet's magnetic field shuddered, and in the chaos the poles may have shifted, tilting Earth's axis and forever changing the rhythm of the heavens. To ancient eyes, the sky itself would have fallen. Auroras would have blazed across every latitude. The sun might have disappeared behind ash and cloud for years. Oceans surged, swallowing coasts and lowlands. The paradise of Hyperborea, once warm, fertile, and radiant, was buried under ice within a single generation. Legends describe this moment in every tongue. The Greeks spoke of Phaethon, the reckless son of Apollo, who seized his father's chariot and scorched the earth until Zeus struck him down, throwing him into the northern sea. The Egyptians called it the Tears of Ra, when the sun god wept for a fallen world. The Norse Edda calls it Fimbulvetur, the great winter that precedes Ragnarok. The Hopi remember it as the time when the sky fell and mankind fled into the underworld for safety. Different voices, same story, a cosmic fire followed by ice. If we strip away the myth, a clear sequence emerges: a celestial impact, global fires, abrupt climate change, and the disappearance of an entire culture whose memory survives only in echoes. To the survivors, it must have felt like the end of creation itself. Some esoteric traditions insist the cataclysm was not natural. The Hyperboreans, masters of resonance and energy, may have tampered with forces beyond their control, destabilizing the Earth's magnetic core or overloading their crystalline power network. In the Codex of the North, a fragmentary text preserved by Siberian shamans, it is said that the song of the world grew too loud, and the sun of the earth broke apart. Whether this refers to a literal energy reactor or a symbolic spiritual fall, the meaning is clear. Harmony became hubris. The music turned to noise. There are whispers of a final act, the sealing of the gates. Myths from Greece to Tibet speak of the retreat of the Shining Ones, beings who fled underground or into the sea just before the sky changed. In the Arctic tundra, ancient burial sites show signs of sudden freezing. Entire herds of mammoths, humans, and flora locked in ice, as though a storm of death had swept the world in a single night. The survivors scattered south, carrying memory instead of maps. They became the teachers, the builders, the gods of the next age. Archaeologists now confirm a curious pattern. After the Younger Dryas, civilization appeared almost instantly. Agriculture, astronomy, and monumental architecture emerged fully formed. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built over 11,000 years ago, rose from nothing, as if designed by those who remembered another world. Its pillars are carved with northern animals, foxes, cranes, serpents, and bears. Its alignments mark the constellations of the old polar sky. It is not the beginning of civilization. It is the aftershock of one that came before. Hyperborea, then, did not die. It was transformed into myth so that its truth could survive the flood of time. Its fall became the archetype of all endings: Atlantis, Lemuria, the deluge, the fall of man, each retelling a coded warning that when humanity forgets balance, the earth resets the scales. Yet even in destruction, there was grace. The Hyperboreans, according to legend, did not fight their fate. They withdrew in silence, entrusting their knowledge to the stone and the stars. "We shall sleep in the ice," the Book of the North says, "until the song is heard again." That line, so simple, so haunting, may be prophecy. For now, as glaciers melt and magnetic fields wander once more, the cycle repeats. The poles tremble, the climate shifts, and the same auroras that once marked the end of Hyperborea dance again above the world. Could it be that the Earth is preparing for another turning of the sky? And if so, are we, their descendants, ready to listen to the warning left in the ice? Perhaps the cataclysm of the past was not punishment, but correction, a cosmic breath between heartbeats, and perhaps the silence that followed was not death, but waiting. Because the Hyperboreans believed that no light ever truly dies. It only retreats beyond the wind until the world is ready to see it again. And now, as the signs return, the question becomes, what if the awakening has already begun? The awakening, signs of Hyperborea's return. It begins with light, not the gentle dawn of ordinary mornings, but a strange electric glow that dances across the polar skies. Brighter, closer, alive. Scientists call it an increase in auroral activity. The ancients would have called it a sign. Over the past century, Earth's poles have been shifting, not figuratively, but physically. Magnetic north is moving faster than at any recorded time in history, racing from Canada toward Siberia at nearly 40 miles per year. The South Atlantic anomaly, a weakening of Earth's magnetic shield, widens each decade. Satellites flicker, navigation systems falter, birds lose their way. The planet's compass is rewriting itself. To science, this is natural geomagnetic drift. To the keepers of Hyperborea's myth, it is something far more profound, the prelude to a new alignment, the return of the axis mundi. As the poles wander, the ice retreats. Beneath Greenland, entire valleys emerge from the melt, revealing fossils of temperate forests where none should exist. In Antarctica, radar scans expose geometric ridges and domes under miles of ice, eerily symmetrical, unnaturally warm. These are geological curiosities to some. To others, they are the frozen vaults of the old civilization, thawing as the world turns once more toward the light. But the awakening is not only physical. Across cultures, reports of heightened consciousness and strange synchronicities multiply. Millions describe vivid dreams of radiant cities, of suns that never set, of vast northern plains filled with music. Psychologists call it archetypal resonance. Mystics call it remembrance. In laboratories, researchers measure spikes in human brainwave coherence during global geomagnetic disturbances, as if the planet's shifting field were literally tuning human minds. It is as though the Earth and humanity are waking together. Theorists of the polar cycle believe that civilization moves in great arcs of 26,000 years, one precessional age. At the end of each cycle, the axis realigns and consciousness resets. The fall of Hyperborea marked the end of the last great cycle. The current upheaval may signal the dawn of the next. The ancients saw these shifts not as disasters but as renewals, epochs when light re-enters matter and forgotten knowledge resurfaces. Look closer. The signs multiply. In 2012, the very year the Mayan calendar marked as the return of the gods, the sun entered a phase of magnetic inversion, its poles flipping for the first time in recorded observation. At the same moment, high-latitude regions experienced record auroral storms, lighting the skies with pillars of green and violet, colors long associated with the Hyperborean flame of awakening. Coincidence, perhaps, but myth and magnetism seem to share the same rhythm. Ancient prophecy foresaw such times. The Sibylline oracles speak of a second Hyperborea that will arise when ice gives birth to rivers of light. The Hopi elders call it Pahana's return. When the world's balance wavers, the white brother from the north will come again to restore harmony. And the Tibetan Kalachakra predicts that from the hidden kingdom of Shambhala, forces of light will re-emerge when the iron birds fly and the world forgets its source. We are living in that world now. Our iron birds fill the skies, our machines circle the stars, and our attention drifts ever outward, even as something ancient begins to whisper from within. Perhaps the whisper is what some call intuition, the unexplainable pull toward the poles, toward the Arctic, toward the aurora's shimmering crown. Expeditions increase each year. Research teams, filmmakers, and adventurers all speak of an energy they can feel but not measure. Some claim to hear a low hum beneath the ice, a frequency too deep for instruments, like the echo of a planetary heartbeat. Even the sciences of the mind are circling the same mystery. Quantum theorists propose that consciousness may be entangled with geomagnetic fields, that memory, emotion, and intuition could be influenced by the planet itself. If that is true, then the awakening of Earth's poles might also be an awakening within us, stirring ancestral memories locked in our DNA, the polar bloodlines we spoke of before. We are not evolving into something new, we are remembering what we were. The Hyperboreans taught that when the world lost its harmony, it would one day be restored, not by intervention, but by resonance. As the poles realign, as the fields stabilize into a new configuration, humanity's perception would expand. Light would no longer be external. It would be understood as consciousness. That, they said, would mark the return of the eternal day. Maybe this is why our era is obsessed with light. Light-speed travel, enlightenment, the digital glow that defines our nights. We seek the same essence through technology that our ancestors sought through spirit. Yet the ancients warned, he who harnesses the light without the harmony will freeze the world again. Their fall was the misuse of energy without wisdom. Ours could be the same, but if we remember, if we learn to balance the inner and outer suns, the cycle might not end in ice, but in illumination. All around us the pieces are moving, shifting poles, awakening skies, and minds remembering a golden age once dismissed as legend. Hyperborea is no longer a myth of the past. It is a mirror of what humanity is becoming. The ice is melting, the sky is stirring, the song of the north grows louder. The question is not whether Hyperborea will return. The question is whether we will recognize it when it does. And in the final chapter of this journey, we face the truth at last, not of the past or the future, but of ourselves. The eternal return, the memory of light. Every myth ends where it began, with the dawn, and so does this one. For in truth, Hyperborea was never just a place. It was, and still is, a state of being, a frequency of harmony between humankind and the cosmos. We have followed its echoes across ice and fire, through maps and ruins into blood and consciousness. We have seen how its geometry shaped our temples, how its language seeded our alphabets, how its memory hid inside the secret orders of history. We have watched the axis of the world turn, burying its cradle beneath the pole and freezing its radiance into myth. But now, at the edge of a new age, the circle closes, because everything that once was light returns to light again. Hyperborea was the first reflection of order in chaos, the original song of the earth. When its harmony faltered, the melody scattered, into the stones, the stars, and the human heart. That scattering became history, the rebuilding became civilization, and the memory became myth. But the myth has done its work. It kept the ember alive. Look around our world now. Humanity is searching again for unity. Scientists speak of quantum coherence. Mystics speak of oneness. Ecologists speak of the living earth. All are different languages for the same idea that Hyperborea once embodied. That existence is not random, but rhythmic, not divided, but whole. Our technology reaches outward, our consciousness reaches inward, and somewhere in the middle, the two begin to touch. That point of meeting, the new axis, is where the light returns. Perhaps the real reawakening of Hyperborea is happening not in the ice or sky, but within the collective mind of our species. The old symbols, the wheel, the cross, the serpent of the pole, no longer represent geography. They represent consciousness turning back toward its source. Every time we seek balance, every time we build rather than destroy, every time we choose wonder over fear, the ancient resonance stirs a little louder. The ancients called this the eternal return, the moment when the world remembers its first song. It is not a cataclysm. It is an awakening, a realization that the fall was never permanent, that paradise was never lost. It was only forgotten, waiting beneath the noise of our own creation. Perhaps this is why so many of us feel nostalgia for something we've never seen, an ache for a golden light behind the clouds of time. It is the memory of Hyperborea itself, the cellular echo of a civilization that once lived in balance with the cosmos. That longing is not weakness, it is guidance. The philosopher's dream, the mystic's vision, the scientist's formula, all are attempts to reassemble that lost pattern. When we speak of enlightenment, when we build machines to capture light, when we send our eyes into the heavens searching for life, we are reenacting the ancient journey northward, the pilgrimage back to the eternal day. And what of the Hyperboreans themselves? Maybe they never disappeared. Maybe they became what we call inspiration, the quiet voice that urges humanity toward creation instead of destruction. Maybe they live through us, in every flash of genius, every act of compassion, every moment of clarity when the veil between worlds feels thin and the air hums like music. If the poles of the planet are the lungs of the earth, then Hyperborea is its breath, the inhale of memory, the exhale of renewal. The cycle turns, the song repeats, and we, the inheritors of both their brilliance and their fall, are given one more chance to listen. Because the lesson of Hyperborea is not about gods or lost technology. It is about harmony. It warns us that knowledge without wisdom freezes the world, but wisdom without knowledge dims its light. The balance of the two, heart and mind, science and spirit, is the key to every golden age. And so, the legend ends not in ice or fire, but in reflection. The land beyond the north wind was never beyond reach. It has always lived where the compass points inward. When we learn to find the still point inside ourselves, the unshaken axis where light and shadow meet, we stand once more at the gates of Hyperborea, not as exiles returning home, but as children of the same eternal sun, finally remembering what we have always been. The wind of the north whispers still. The auroras shimmer like forgotten temples of light. And somewhere between the silence and the sound, the ancient song begins again. Because Hyperborea was never lost. It is the memory of light, and light can never be destroyed. It only waits to be remembered.